really good at making statements.
I guess just first off, Coach, just your general thoughts on, from hearing kind of what you've been saying before, it's safe to say a snubbing.
Well, I don't know if snubbing is a proper term. I think maybe being somewhat overlooked based on the fact that we're not a BCS school, I think could have entered in. I mean, there's no way of knowing what is in the committee's mind. We certainly had opportunities to not have the bad losses that we had early on, and that might have changed the outcome. So I think, we have to take partial responsibility for that. But as a coach, it's very difficult to justify a team getting in that lost 24 of their last 35 games when we've done everything we could, to win everything we could, finish second in our league. And, so I think from that perspective, I guess you could look at it as being overlooked, for some reason. I don't know why, and I've sent a few text messages. I haven't gotten any replies, just because it would be nice to understand it and be able to explain it, to the players. Because that's a big question mark.
Are you talking about Arkansas in particularly? Yeah.
You genuinely seem upset. Can you just tell us why?
Well, I think on the end of my career, I didn't really want to go out this way. And I do feel that our team, we did everything we possibly could. We had 14 wins against the top 100. And I think Northwestern might have had 16, but Arkansas had 9. Many of the teams that are in didn't even schedule, outside of their conference play, didn't even schedule top 25 teams, which we have to do because of our conference. And so I'm upset about that, because I think our team, even though we had a lot of down moments, we had a lot of really good up moments, and I felt like everybody was really starting to get it at the end, and you just kind of wanted that one more shot, to, maybe have a shot at going a little bit further. So I think I'm upset mostly for the players more than anything.
Was it weird getting up this morning not having to prepare for a tournament, since this is the first time it's ever happened?
Yeah, I have to say it's been a very strange day, and although I'm getting a lot of requests for scouting reports, I don't know how inclined I am to help anyone at this point. Because I feel strongly that we worked extremely hard, to put together a team with a lot of injuries, a lot of young kids, and we never used it as an excuse and still aren't. That's not why we're not in. Our team went above and beyond, I think, most of the time, and I just feel bad for them.
And going into Selection Sunday, you felt pretty confident you would get into the tournament.
Well, it's a long plane ride from El Paso to Fresno, and I've been in this tournament 35 times, so it's kind of like you know what they're looking at and what they're looking for and different things like that, and so you think you get a handle on it and you measure yourself up to the other bubble teams, and I could have predicted 2 of the 3 other than ULL and Hawaii getting in. I just thought we might have been that 5th one, getting in based on all the information that we had, which, you can go on the internet and you can get about anything you want. I was surprised that the 5th place team in the Big Ten would get in with a 500 record over 2, 3, and 4, even in that conference, particularly on a year where they did not have to play the conference champion. So I think, there are a lot of, I'm happy for everyone who's in. It's tough to get in. I think a very valid point to keep in mind is you have 30 automatic qualifiers, and 6 of those 30 are BCS conferences. So there are 24 non-BCS schools that had to win their conference championship to get in. So that leaves 34 at large to pick from. Out of the 34 at large, 29 that were picked were BCS. So there were only 5 mid-major schools picked outside of, that's 85% of the at-larges went to the BCS. So I think from that perspective, I don't think anyone should be penalized for the conference that their school has chosen to be in. And it's not like the rest of us would not like to be in a BCS school and play that competition, because we play them all the time. But to be disqualified, so to speak, because of what your school chooses, what conference they choose to play in, I think is unfortunate for not just our school, for a lot of schools.
And is that something you've noticed more and more, that it's become more and more difficult for a non-BCS to get into the tournament of that large?
Well, I think if you'll notice in the 80s, 90s, even clear up until 2000, there was an average of 2 to 4 mid-major schools in the World Series every year. After 99, the average is less than 1 per year. Since 2000, there have been 4 mid-major schools represented in the College World Series for 7 appearances. In the 90s, late 80s and 90s, there were, it was like 14 mid-major schools that were there 60 sometimes. There's been a big change in all sports, but I think very noticeable when you only go to a Final 8. Very noticeable.
Coach, has it hit you that you coached your last game at Fresno State, or is this going to motivate you to come back?
Well, I don't think they'll let me come back here, but no, I really think, this is where I wanted to finish. This is the team I wanted to finish with. So, no, I think it motivates me maybe to try to help the system be better for other people who, I think are not looked upon as highly just because, as I mentioned, of their conference affiliation. I just don't think that's fair. These are young student athletes that are fighting just as hard as everyone else. And I think that something needs to be done. I was on one of the very first Ncaa softball selection committees. I was the chair of it, in fact, and I remember then making sure that, so many people, and I was at Illinois State at the time, so many people wanted regional representation when clearly we all knew the strength was on the West Coast. And I was the one that stood up and said, guys, to me, a College World Series is the 8 best teams. I don't think they have to come from everywhere. And I still believe that. I think you have the best 8 teams and you have the best 64 get involved, no matter what it means, no matter how you have to structure it. The best 64 teams should be vying for the national championship. I think that's the only fair way to do it. And that's why, particularly in men's and women's basketball, when Gonzaga gets in, it's such a freak thing because hardly any mid-majors get into those tournaments. And that's kind of how their structure has evolved.
Have there been any other coaches that have contacted you, kind of surprised that you're not in, coaches that are probably in the tournament?
Yeah, several. In fact, it's several were pretty shocked, I think. And, the ones that are in the tournament are very busy right now. And a lot of them have contacted me in disbelief, but yet wanting help, against the opponents that maybe we played at somewhere along the way, which, again, that's something I just have to decide if I want to do or not.
Is it extra painful that you now officially have coached your last game at Fresno State?
Well, once the decision was made, every game was painful, because I don't think, you never know if it's the last one. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow, so it's kind of like every day was, a little bit tough.
This diamond is served as a blueprint for an entire sport. When you look back to like the 80s, schools would come here, administrators, coaches would come here. And what do you remember about those conversations as you saw the sport grow?
Well, I remember us being the first college campus stadium. And there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, put in this facility. And I can't even remember the number of schools that contacted me that we made copies of our prints, our blueprints of this stadium, and sent them to them. And they made smaller versions in most cases. But, most of them were BCS schools that didn't have facilities. And how are they going to compete with a mid-major school if they don't have one, especially one as nice as this? So, there have been dozens of administrators and coaches over the years who have wanted our information.
Have you been able to talk to your team yet after last night?
No, we have a meeting after this, today.
What do you plan on telling them, or have you even thought of that yet?
Well, I'll let them have an opinion, but I think they need to understand we could have done better and made it easier on ourselves. We didn't, and this is when you leave it in the hands of other people and you don't take care of it yourself throughout life. If you leave anything in someone else's hands, there are going to be times when you're disappointed. and this is one of those times.
Going back to your retirement, when did those thoughts of retiring start entering your head? Did you have that going into the season at
No.
all, or last season?
No, I really didn't. I mean, I think there are moments when you're frustrated with, either your team, or you're frustrated with the system, or you're frustrated with the battles you have to do, inside the administration. And there's times where you just say, holy cow, when does this get easy? And those happen probably more often in the last few years, but I really had no idea. That's why you bring in these 9 new kids, and you have 6 more waiting to come in next year. I really had no inkling that this would be it. And then when I realized this team was really special, and then a lot of other incidents, that went on that, that I had to deal with, I think it kind of hit me that, maybe this is the right time.
You had a lot of battles with the university with the Title IX topic, and then did things at all improve over the years? You had a lot of those lawsuits in 2007 and the settlements. Did things get better from that point on, or is there still a lot of work on that front?
There's still a lot of work on just about every college campus, and that's really all I can say about it. I didn't file any of the lawsuits. My mediation was something Fresno State wanted to do. I didn't file any lawsuit against the school, and I know sometimes that's how it's gotten out in the media, but that never happened. And so the settlement was something they chose to do, not something that I was requesting. There's just a lot of things. I mean, our new scoreboard out here this year, we had the money in our booster club in July, and this scoreboard was not put up until April. I can't imagine them understanding how the players felt about that. That was tough because ours had been broken for 2 years. So, it's things like that I think are always going to be a constant struggle, on campuses. And that was clearly a struggle this year for me. To have a broken speaker happen in the first game of the season and not get it back until the 29th game of the season. Those kinds of things are tough, after you've gone through as many years as I have of always trying to have things done properly for your players, to give them a fair chance to win.
That has to be pretty taxing, always